just took a practice GRE and I did not get a favorable score, so we're gonna do something that makes me happy. It's not a shock to anyone that I like anime. It's also not a shock to anyone that I love social work and psychology and sociology, the social sciences in general. I mean, I have my bachelor's degree in social work is like right up there. Like I'm looking at it, it's right up there. This semester for my practice with families class, I had to choose a sample family. It could either be something for my practicum, but I wasn't in practicum yet. So I had to pick either from a case study, a movie, a TV show, really anything that I felt like I could accurately work with. And I had to apply some kind of family therapeutic approach to this family. And I chose the Hori family from Horimiya, and I chose to apply attachment-based family therapy to them. I chose this honestly because I had always really connected attachment theory, which is what attachment-based family therapy is rooted in, to Horimiya very, very closely, just because of the way that Hori's family in particular interacts with each other, and because of the way that Hori interacts with Miyamura. And so I figured I could probably do a pretty interesting analysis of some of the characters of Horimiya through the lens of attachment theory. So I just kind of want to talk about that a little. It's a bit of a niche interest, but it's mine. So first of all, what the hell is Horimiya? So Horimiya actually started out as a webcomic called Hori-san to miyamura-kun by Hiro. It was later adapted into a manga by Daisuke Hajiwara. I think I said his name right. I really hope I didn't butcher that. And Hiro under the title Horimiya, combining the two main characters' names. Horimiya is a romantic comedy anime that follows the lives of two high school students, Kyoko Hori and Izumi Miyamura. At first glance, they seem like complete opposite individuals. Hori is very popular, she's beautiful, she's smart, and she's highly, highly sought after by the boys at her school and by boys in general. While Miyamura is quiet, bit of a loner, bit of a weirdo, a lot of people think he is an otaku. And then one day they meet outside of school and realize that they are actually quite different from their at-school personas and have a lot more in common than initially believed. The anime in general explores themes of friendship, love, self-acceptance. It's a really, really wholesome show. It's really cute. It is my favorite romance anime to ever exist. I love it so much. And I think it's a big enough ensemble show that you can always find somebody that you relate to specifically. So now let's talk a little bit about what attachment theory is. Now, I'm not going to go into attachment theory in depth. That would take way too long. I'm just kind of going to give you the pieces of attachment theory that you need to be able to understand what I'm talking about. So attachment theory is a psychological theory that explains how humans form emotional bonds with others, particularly in the context of close relationships. It posits that your relationships with caregivers in early childhood impacts how you form relationships later in life. One of the key components of attachment theory is that human beings form attachment styles based on the interactions they have with their caregivers as children. There are two main categories of attachment styles, secure and insecure. The secure attachment style is formed when parents meet their child's physical and emotional needs in childhood. People with a secure attachment style are comfortable with intimacy and independence, they trust others, they feel worthy of love and support, and they tend to have very healthy, stable, and fulfilling relationships with others. They're also very, very capable of balancing their needs with the needs of their partner. They don't prioritize one or the other. They believe that both can coexist. And then within the insecure category, there are actually 3 different styles of attachment. So the anxious attachment style is associated with inconsistent parenting. Sometimes the parents were supportive and responsive, while other times they were very misattuned to their child's needs, both physically and emotionally. This is associated with low self-esteem, a strong fear of rejection or abandonment, and clinginess in relationships. Oftentimes, these people seek intimacy and closeness and are highly emotionally dependent upon others. The next type is the avoidant attachment style, and that's associated with caregivers who are strict, emotionally distant, don't really tolerate the expression of feelings, and expect their children to be independent and tough. These caregivers will provide their physical needs, but are emotionally distant and reject the child when they reach out for affection. These people appear to be confident and self-sufficient. Typically, they're very high achievers. They'll let you around them, but they really won't let you in, and they close off if things start to get too serious in the relationships. The avoidant individual rejects closeness and intimacy. They want nothing to do with it, and they feel that no one can be relied on. Next up is disorganized attachment. Now, this is kind of a combination of anxious and avoidant, and it's considered the most difficult to manage. This develops when a child's source of safety is also a source of fear. Caregivers are showing inconsistent and unpredictable behavior, so the child never knows exactly how the caregiver is going to react to a request they make or to an action they do. These people are extremely inconsistent in their behaviors and have a difficult time trusting others. They desire and crave close relationships, but they fear intimacy and often end up pushing people away. It's very, very important to understand that these people fear intimacy. They don't reject it. They want it. They desperately want it. And sometimes they cling, but at the end of the day, they're so afraid of it that they will push people away. That's what makes them different from the anxious who just clings and the avoidant who just rejects intimacy and doesn't want it. They don't believe that they'll be loved and supported as they are, and they believe that being let down and abandoned by the people around them is inevitable, making them so terrified of intimacy and of getting close to people. One of the things that I think is amazing about attachment styles and so hopeful is that your attachment style can actually be changed and healed. You can go from having an insecure attachment style to having a secure attachment style through therapy and attachment repair. That's actually kind of like the key component of attachment-based family therapy. It's developing an attachment rupture narrative and then working to repair that rupture narrative and working to repair those ruptures. Sometimes that's reenacting when the rupture happened with the parents and the children. It's a really, really cool thing. All right, now there's a million characters in Horimiya that exist. So for this, we're just going to focus on the Hori family. So Kyoko, Yuriko, Kyosuke, and Sota. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Izumi because Izumi is quite integral to the family. Like, he's basically a part of the family. I can't say much about Izumi's family because we don't really get to see a lot of the Miyamotas. We do see a lot of the Horis, though. I also want to clarify, I'm only talking about the anime. I'm not talking about the manga. I've literally read one chapter of the manga. It's really, really good, but, like, I don't have enough information about it to, like, make clear-cut conclusions. Let's start with talking about Kyoko, who I think it's pretty obvious has a disorganized attachment style. I think it's a pretty good argument too that Kyoko could have an anxious attachment style. She's very, very clingy. She gets very jealous very easily. She is terrified of Izumi abandoning her, but she has this push-pull thing about her. She keeps people at arm's length at the beginning of the series, and that's very, very obvious, but she clearly desires closeness and intimacy, and you can see that in the way that her and Miyamura act whenever they start to become close and get to know one another. Like, she gets upset at the idea of him not coming over to her house anymore and not spending time with her anymore. He distances himself from her to protect her reputation, and this deeply hurts her. She feels like he's abandoning her. And I definitely think Kyoko does kind of have the childhood setup to create this. I mean, her father was pretty inconsistent. He was sometimes there, he sometimes wasn't. Her mother heavily pushed onto her the household responsibilities and the household duties. Neither of them appear to have been very emotionally present, sometimes physically present, so she really couldn't rely on anyone growing up. We see in Kyoko that she lives almost in this constant state of fear that everybody is going to abandon her. I mean, in the episode where she gets really, really sick, she sits there and she cries and she just goes, "Why are you never here? Why do you go away?" And she's talking about her mom. Since she was a child, her mother has taken advantage of how strong she is and how resilient she is. I mean, it's no wonder that Kyoko is so high achieving, but also so deeply afraid of not being wanted and not being loved and of being abandoned. Again, I think that there's an argument you could make that she has an anxious attachment style instead. I just think that some of her behaviors, like her more violent behaviors, and the fact that she goes between being really jealous and angry rather than clinging to people, sometimes she pushes them away. Like when she refuses to speak to Izumi in one of the episodes. I think it's in season 2 in The Missing Pieces. They get into a fight, she like hits herself or something, she hits him, and then she refuses to speak to him because she's upset. And he's like, I'm not apologizing again for this, which he didn't have to. Like, that fight was Kyoko's fault. But nonetheless, I think that there is a better argument for disorganized attachment than there is for anxious. However, I could see how someone would rather draw the conclusion of her having an anxious attachment style than a disorganized one, especially since disorganized attachment is heavily associated with childhood abuse, and we don't really have any evidence of childhood abuse. It is also simply associated with individuals who had very inconsistent caregivers, and quite frankly, Yuriko and Kyosuke are like the definition of inconsistent caregivers. Now let's talk about our boy Izumi. Izumi very clearly has a secure attachment style, and I have seen people argue that he might have an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style based on his behaviors in the beginning of the series. Especially when we talk about the fact that earlier in the series, he quite literally distanced himself from Kyoko because he believed that he was ruining her reputation. He has a very low self-esteem. He does not think he's deserving of love or friendship. Like, he would rather protect the people he cares about's reputation than have them in his life. But I think an important distinguishment here is that his issues came from experiences that he had at school. His home life is shown to be pretty good. We don't see a lot of Miyamura's home life in this show. We see a little bit of his mom. We see he goes to a funeral with his family, but that's pretty much it. But the indications we're given of his struggles and his mental health challenges are all from like middle school and early high school. They're all social rejection, they're all isolation, they're all bullying from the kids around him, which can obviously create issues and create a low self-esteem, but doesn't necessarily cause an attachment rupture and doesn't necessarily cause someone to have an insecure attachment style. I would say he definitely has a secure attachment style. He's just a bit insecure and likely is suffering from some trauma associated with bullying. Not like big T traumas, but some little T traumas, and maybe was struggling a little with his mental health. I mean, his secure attachment, I think, is very well seen in the way he interacts with Hori, in his security, in his relationship with Hori as the relationship goes on. She is constantly afraid, constantly wondering if he's going to leave her. She gets very jealous. She gets very angry very easily. She's pretty neurotic and unpredictable and inconsistent in her behaviors. But Izumi is very steadfast and consistent in the way he behaves. He's very understanding of her struggles. He's very, very patient with her. He never really doubts whether or not she wants to be with him or whether or not she loves him. And he only gets jealous once in the series. And it's when some guy, like, lets Hori borrow his jacket. But I think that that's normal teenage jealousy. Like, he doesn't go to the extremes that she does when she's jealous and, like, blame her for it. She kind of puts the jealousy on him sometimes. I think that they're really good for each other and that she's really attracted to him because he is so consistent and he is such a safe person. He doesn't leave her. Like, when she gets sick, he is the person that she's talking to when she says, "Why do you always leave? Why are you always leaving?" And he understands what she's trying to say is she doesn't want him to go. She wants someone to stay with her. And he stays with her as long as he can. And it's very, very sweet. He's very good at understanding what she's trying to communicate and what she's trying to say, even when she doesn't really know how to properly communicate it. He reassures her. He lets her know that he loves her. I think this couple does a lot for each other in a lot of ways. I think she really helps him with his social problems and with his insecurities about like friendships and his social life in school. Like, he does credit her as being the person that got him out of the rut he was in at the beginning of the year, the rut that would have kept him unhappy. Like, he was so unhappy that he wanted to die. Like, that's a canon thing. He wanted to be dead. And she really helped pull him out of that. She helped raise his self-esteem enough that he realized that he is worthy of friendship and that people will like him. And Izumi is able to be this stable rock for her and help her work through her attachment issues. You know, she's terrified of being abandoned, but he doesn't make her feel necessarily like she's crazy or shame her for having this fear, for being jealous. He kind of just understands it and gets that it's a part of Kyoko, and since he's seen her family, I'm assuming Izumi understands why she is the way she is. Now I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the Hori family. So, like, I want to talk about Sota, I want to talk about Yuriko, and I want to talk about Kyosuke. Now, I did have to do a lot of research for that project that I did. So I do know some information from the manga that does set up who these characters are a little bit. First, I want to talk about Sota, because what I'm thinking about Sota is actually quite interesting. So I think Sota has a secure attachment. Like, I do. But I don't think it's to his parents. I think it's to Hori. Because Hori has been his caregiver. She has been the one taking care of him. She provided him with all the things necessary to have a secure attachment style. Do I think that that necessarily means he has an appropriate attachment with his sister? No, I think he's a little too dependent upon her. I also think that he's not really attached well enough to either of his parents. The case of Sota is very interesting because Sota doesn't really have any behavioral issues that we see in the show. He's a good kid and he loves his sister and he's very, very close to Hori, but we do see that he is almost unhealthily attached to her. He doesn't really interact with his parents like they're his parents. I don't really see him interacting with his parents at all, except maybe his dad a little bit, but he seems to treat his dad more like a friend. He seems to treat Izumi and Kyoko as his parents and go to them for like parental support and parental advice and comfort, which I don't think is indicative of an attachment rupture or an attachment issue. Like, maybe there's an attachment rupture between specifically him and Yuriko and him and Kyosuke, but he definitely doesn't have like a generally insecure attachment style. I don't think that means his attachment is necessarily healthy within his family, though. Now, when talking about Yuriko and Kyosuke, I think both of them might actually have an avoidant attachment style. I don't think either has a secure attachment style, because no one ends up in as unhealthy a marriage as Yuriko and Kyosuke with a completely normal, healthy attachment style. Yuriko is known to be quite passive-aggressive and not great at just directly communicating how she feels. And Kyosuke is known to not be good with passive aggression. He takes things very literally. He struggles with social cues, which can often be seen as him being very rude or very brash. Like, in his character introduction, he is so, like, socially unaware, unable to read the room, that he forces Kyoko to admit to a confession that she isn't exactly ready for yet, or she hasn't stated she's ready for yet, and like completely ruins her moment with Izumi. It's an interesting situation to watch unfold because it tells you a lot about Kyosuke as a character, and the more that you see him and Kyoko interact, the more it tells you about their relationship. Because the thing is, nobody with a secure attachment style just leaves their family when shit goes wrong. You know, Kyosuke leaves because of the conflict with his wife, because him and Yuriko can't get along, and because there's a lot going on. And that's part of what's created Kyoko's attachment issues. And he loves Kyoko. She was a daddy's girl. Like, that's something that I learned in my research, is that her and him were very close. And you see in the show, he talks about her. At one point, he's like, I think he's showing Miyamura some pictures of Kyoko and him when she was younger. And that indicates that she and him were very close at one point. And I mean, that's gotta hurt even more when he like up and left. And it must be really painful for him to realize that the conflict with his wife has negatively impacted the positive relationship he had with his daughter. I can't imagine how either of them feel about their relationship with Sota, because they don't really seem to have one. I mean, Yuriko has openly admitted that she doesn't like doing housework or childcare responsibilities. That's why she picks up extra shifts, so she doesn't have to, and she pushes it onto Kyoko. But I mean, she does love her kids. Like, she loves Kyoko and she loves Sota. So I can only imagine that it's upsetting to her that she's not super close to Sota. But whenever she has a conflict going on with Kyosuke, she can't like confront it head on, and they don't seem to have any desire to be close to each other. Maybe that's just from years of resentment. I theorize that they have avoidant attachment styles. They're both pretty afraid of intimacy. They both don't really like it. And they're both very hardworking people. They're very independent. They're very self-sufficient. They have all of those qualities. And so this really is more of a theory. They could both have very secure attachment styles, and I'm just like projecting. But this is just kind of what I think from what I've noticed. And also, the environment they created that created Kyoko's attachment problems and Sota's attachment problems, even though his attachment style is pretty secure, definitely isn't one created by people with healthy, secure attachment styles. All right, that was fun. I feel better now. But, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. That's just kind of how I feel. Having a degree in social work and, like, being someone who works with people, like, in mental health has definitely impacted the way that I view shows and media. I don't know. I think that there's a lot to analyze with Horimiya. I mean, it uses high school students, and I think that that is like such a good place to look when you want to do an analysis of mental health, because high school students aren't exactly known for being the most psychologically stable individuals. They're going through a lot of changes in life, and their like hormones are all over the place. Their brains are far from fully developed. I mean, my brain's not fully developed, and I'm in a master's program. I'm 21. But yeah, if you thought what I said was interesting, I'm glad. If you have thoughts, tell me. I love talking about this stuff. Have a great day.